The original Buddhism was not a traditional and ritualistic religion based on blind belief and practices. It is an independent scientific vision of the universe and the life in it, to be realized by a scientific means of observation, investigation, and conclusions, to be realized by the insight of wisdom that is beyond the sensory knowledge acquired by our sensory organs. The vision of the original Buddhism reveals the actual nature of the physical and the mental world that we experience. The world, both physical and mental, is created by the universal energy. Energy is not a thing, but a constant dynamism. It is dynamic. Constant dynamism means there is a constant transformation of the universal energy. When there is a constant transformation of things and beings, nothing and no being can retain a permanent identity. The Buddha referred to these three aspects as the three realities of the physical and the mental world. In Buddha's word, anicca means universal dynamism, the constant activity, identified in theistic religions as a creator God. But according to Buddha, there is no creator, there is no person, there is no being, but there is only a belief that there is a universal being, almighty being, behind all this constant transformation, activating it. Buddha saw no such beings in the entire universe through his Buddha wisdom, the insight of wisdom. The vision of the original Buddhism that the Buddha realized through his insight of wisdom is revealed in his early teachings. It's still recorded in the Buddhist canon called Tripitaka in Pali. As I mentioned earlier, Buddha realized that the entire mental and physical world is a creation of the universal energy, which is dynamic, universally dynamic, constantly dynamic, so that there is a constant transformation of energy. Due to this constant transformation of things and beings, nothing and no being can retain a permanent identity. Buddha referred to these three aspects of the physical and the mental world as three realities of our apparent world, the world that we experience. The universal dynamism is referred to as anicca, and the constant transformation of that dynamism called universal energy as dukkha, and the resultant non-retainity of any being or thing to be permanent as anatta. That means there is no soul, eternal soul in anything or in any being according to Buddha's vision. The non-reality of these realities of the universe is referred to by the Buddha in his language as moha, ignorance of the reality. It is this ignorance that gives rise to our attachment to things and beings, as well as our detachment or resentment of things and beings. In Buddha's language, the attachment is referred to as raga, resentment as dosa, and the ignorance that leads to such realization of a non-reality as moha, not knowing the reality of things and beings. It is without knowing the actual reality of things and beings we get attached to them, or we resent them. Enlightenment is the extinction of ignorance of the reality, attachment to apparent things and beings, and resentment of apparent things and beings. Therefore, he described the ultimate reality of things and beings, or the ultimate reality that can be experienced in the universe as Nibbana. He defined Nibbana in the Nibbana Sutta, the discourse called Nibbana Sutta, saying, Raga koyo, dosa koyo, moha koyo, idang muchyati Nibbana. That means Nibbana is the extinction of raga, that is attachment, extinction of attachment to things and beings. Dosa, resentment of things and beings. And moha, extinction of the ignorance of the reality of things and beings. Realization of this ultimate reality of things and beings is called in English as enlightenment, and in Pali the attainment of the Buddhahood. In Pali, the word bodhiti means understanding the reality, the truth of things and beings. Buddha means, Buddha is a participle, past participle of the word bodhiti, and it means understood the reality. In Pali, one who has understood the reality of things and beings is called Buddha, Buddho in the real form. of beings that realize this. Buddhism refers to three types of people or persons who realize this ultimate reality. Some realize the ultimate reality, that is majority, by listening to a really perfectly enlightened one. And those who realize through hearing or reading the words of an enlightened one is called Savaka Buddha. Some observe things and beings and realize the reality of things and beings alone. And they are called Pacceka Buddha. They can realize, but they can't make others realize what they have realized. But really, there are perfect beings called Samma Sambuddha, perfect enlightened one, who realize things and beings independently by oneself and who are able to make others to understand the reality of things and beings. A Buddhist means one who has understood the reality of things and beings, so that he is free from attachment to things, resentment of things, and ignorance of the reality of things and beings. And such one is called a Buddhist, if he is on the path to enlightenment. Once enlightened, such a being is called a Buddha. As I mentioned earlier, if one realizes by listening to a perfect enlightened one, is called a Savaka Buddha. If one observes things and beings and realize the reality behind them, as Pacceka Buddha, and those who realize things and beings, the reality of things and beings alone by oneself, and who can make others to understand the reality of things and beings behind the apparent realities, is called Samma Sambuddha. There is the capacity of being a Buddha in all of us. Majority can be Savaka Buddhas, disciple Buddhas, who can become a disciple and understand the reality of things and beings. There are few who observe things and through a scientific attitude of observation, investigation, and correct conclusion through insight is called Pacceka Buddha. And they can realize the reality, but they can't make others understand the reality. As I mentioned earlier, it is only a perfect Buddha who can realize the actual reality of things and beings and make others to understand that actual reality. Those who are on the path to enlightenment, final realization of the reality of things and beings, are called Buddhists. And realization is through an independent vision by oneself. A vision, independent vision here means beyond the knowledge, sensory knowledge acquired by sensory organs. In the Buddha discourse called Karanamita Sutta, this state of realization is referred to as Dittincha Anupagamma Silava Dasanena Sampanno. Drishti means prejudices, preconceived notions based on sensory knowledge. Dittincha Anupagamma means going beyond knowledge, going beyond sensory knowledge, Ditti means, Anugam, Dasanena means seeing things, vision, an independent vision. A vision of the wisdom, referred to as insight of wisdom. We all are entitled and endowed with such a vision to be opened up and to be enlightened one day.